My hotel room had a locked door I shouldn't open. The key felt heavier than it should have. I don't mean physically. It was a simple brass thing, cheap and slightly tarnished, but in my hand it felt like it carried weight, like it was holding the hotel itself in its grip. Maybe it was just my exhaustion talking. I had been traveling for nearly 12 hours straight, juggling flights, trains, and an ungodly amount of luggage, and when I finally saw the sign for the Stanton Inn, I thought I'd found paradise. From the outside, it looked harmless enough, a standard mid-tier hotel, beige and unassuming, with dim lights flickering sporadically along the facade. I shrugged off the flickers. Old buildings have old wiring, right? That's what I told myself as I dragged my suitcase across the cracked pavement and pushed open the revolving door. The lobby was quiet, not the pleasant, calming quiet of a hotel at night where everyone is asleep in their rooms, but the kind of quiet that makes your skin crawl, like the whole place was holding its breath. There was a receptionist behind the desk, a woman who didn't look up from her screen as I approached. Her hair was tied back tightly, her face neutral to the point of coldness, and there was something about the way she moved, slow, deliberate, almost mechanical, that set me on edge. "Hi, I have a reservation, names," I started, and she cut me off. "Room 407, key." She pushed a single brass key across the counter without looking up. No smile, no welcome, nothing. Just key. I blinked. Thanks." She finally glanced at me for a brief moment, and it wasn't a welcoming glance. It was assessing, almost predatory, like she was measuring whether I belonged here, or whether I would survive. Shaking off the weird vibe, I took the key and headed for the elevator. The air smelled faintly of mildew and cleaning chemicals, a combination I've since learned to associate with old hotels that are hiding something. The elevator ride was unnerving. The walls were mirrored but distorted, like a funhouse mirror, stretching my reflection in weird, unnatural ways. I kept looking away, telling myself it was fatigue messing with me. When the doors opened to the fourth floor, the hallway was empty, save for a single flickering light halfway down the corridor. The carpet had a pattern that made my eyes feel like they were shifting as I walked, and every step I took echoed unnaturally loud. Room 407, the key turned in the lock with a harsh click that made my stomach drop. I opened the door, half expecting something to jump out at me, but the room was normal. A standard hotel room. Bed, desk, small dresser, TV mounted crookedly on the wall. Nothing out of the ordinary. I exhaled, relief washing over me. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Then I noticed the door. At first, I thought it was a closet, but it was different from the other doors. No knob, just a simple round lock embedded into the wood, slightly tarnished like the key I held in my hand. There was no label, no sign, nothing to indicate what it was for. I tried the handle, locked. I frowned. "That's weird," I muttered. The key didn't fit. I jiggled it, tried the knob in every way, but nothing worked. I shrugged it off, blaming the hotel staff for poor maintenance, and decided to unpack. The first few hours were uneventful, and I started to convince myself that the locked door was just a forgotten storage closet. But then the noises started. At first, it was subtle, a faint creak, like the sound of someone shuffling just behind that door. I paused, trying to rationalize it. Maybe the building was old, settling. But then I heard it again, a soft scratching, like fingernails dragging lightly across wood. My stomach tightened. I stared at the door. The scratching stopped. I tried to laugh it off. "It's fine," I told myself. "Old building, settling, rats." But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was aware I was here. Later that night, I woke to a sound that made my blood run cold. Breathing. Not my own, not regular airflow, but slow, deliberate breathing. The kind that comes from someone, or something, watching you. I froze under the covers, heart hammering. The sound wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from inside the room. And then I noticed it, a shadow, just a small, flickering thing, like a dark smear moving across the floor near the locked door. I blinked. Nothing. I blinked again. There it was. I told myself it was my imagination, that I was tired, that anyone would be scared after 12 hours of traveling in a weird hotel. But deep down, I knew it wasn't imagination. Over the next few nights, the noises grew. The scratching became sharper, the creaking louder, the whispers, if they were whispers, barely audible. Sometimes it almost sounded like a name being called, my name. I started checking the hallway for shadows, for other rooms, for anyone who might explain what was going on, but the floor was always empty. The elevator dinged occasionally, but no one ever got in or out. The more I ignored it, the louder it got. At one point, I woke to find the hotel room door, the one leading out to the hallway, ajar. I swear I had locked it. I must have imagined it, I told myself. I'm sure of it. Still, the locked door inside my room remained a mystery. What was behind it? Why had no one told me about it? Why did I feel like it wanted me to leave it alone? I tried rational thinking. Maybe it was maintenance, maybe a storage room for cleaning supplies, maybe it had been sealed after some minor damage, but every time I approached it, my stomach twisted into knots. Every step I took closer made the air feel heavier. Every glance at it made the shadows in the room seem longer, darker, moving just out of the corner of my eye. I started keeping a journal, recording every sound, every flicker of light, every whisper. I even marked the times the shadows appeared. It became an obsession. The hotel itself became a character to me. quiet, watching, patient. And then last night happened. I was sitting at the desk, laptop open, pretending to work while the scratching behind the locked door grew insistent. I leaned in closer, straining to hear. It was almost like a pulse now, rhythmic, deliberate, taunting, and then a single word came through the thin wood. Open. My blood ran cold. My rational mind screamed to leave it alone, to pretend I hadn't heard it. But another part of me, a darker, hungrier part, wanted to know, wanted to see. I couldn't sleep. I didn't eat. I sat on the bed, staring at that door for hours, listening to it breathe, to it watch me. Shadows flickered in the corners. The room seemed to shrink. The air grew heavy, and I realized something terrifying. The door wasn't just a mystery, it was alive. Or whatever was behind it was, and it was waiting. I don't know why, but I made a decision. Tomorrow, I'm going to try to open it. I don't care what warnings my gut gives me. I need to know. I need to see. I can't stay in this limbo, this hotel room that watches me, that whispers my name, that scratches at the edges of my sanity. So here I am telling you all of this, because I need someone to know. If I disappear, if I never post again, at least someone will know there was something behind that door, something that shouldn't exist. And tomorrow, I'm going to open it. It's not just a door, it's a warning. I wish I could tell you otherwise. I wish I could say it's just an old, creaky hotel door, a piece of furniture, a bad wiring job, but I can't. The door in my hotel room, the locked one nobody ever mentioned, wasn't passive. It didn't just exist. It watched, it breathed, it waited. The day after I heard it whisper my name, I tried to act normal. I unpacked a little, ordered room service, and even tried to watch TV, convincing myself it was exhaustion talking, that my imagination was playing cruel tricks. But every time I turned my head, that door was there. Unmoved, unyielding, silent, except when it wasn't. I noticed the first shift mid-morning. I had left the window slightly open because it was stifling, and when I returned from a quick shower, the window was almost shut completely. Not blown by the wind, not loose. Someone or something had closed it. My first thought was that the cleaning staff had come in. Impossible. My room had a do not disturb sign, and the hallways were empty when I checked. Then things started moving on their own. Small things at first. The TV remote I left on the bed appeared on the desk. A water bottle I placed on the nightstand ended up on the floor. Not major, but enough to make my hair stand on end. I began noticing that objects weren't just moving, they were shifting with intent. Sometimes it was a subtle gesture, like pointing at the door. Sometimes a tap on my shoulder when I wasn't looking. I tried talking to the receptionist. I went down to the front desk and asked casually about the room, the maintenance, anything about that locked door. She looked at me the way people look at someone asking a question they shouldn't have. Cold, unblinking. "I'm not sure what you mean," she said flatly. "Room 407 is fully functional. There's nothing unusual." "Yeah, but there's this door inside the room. It's locked." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "All rooms have closets." And that was it. No explanation, no further questioning, no concern. Just that look, the one that made me feel like I had said something I wasn't supposed to. Back in my room, the door didn't just loom. It called. Scratches at first. Light, as though something was testing me, just feeling the boundaries. Then came the whispers. Not coherent at first, just a hiss like air escaping through wet paper. But slowly, patterns emerged. I started hearing syllables that made sense. Sometimes a word. Sometimes my name. I spent hours sitting on the edge of the bed, listening, trying to convince myself I was imagining it. But the sounds grew louder as the night came. And then I started to see things. Fleeting figures, shadows moving just out of the corner of my eye. I turned suddenly. Nothing. Blinked. Nothing. But the feeling of being watched intensified. Every flicker of light, every ripple of shadow felt like a silent warning. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I started digging online, searching for anything about the hotel. That's when I stumbled across forum posts, travel blogs, Reddit threads. People whispering about disappearances, missing guests, unexplained phenomena in hotels across the country, and some pointing specifically to the Stanton Inn. The stories were chilling. Guests who checked in and never checked out, screams heard in the night, whispers behind locked doors. Some posts even included screenshots of photos, dark, grainy images of hotel hallways with shadows that clearly didn't belong. And there it was, in one post. "Do not open the door in room 407. Whatever is behind it doesn't like attention. It waits, it watches, and it follows." I felt a chill that went straight to my bones. My heart raced, my hands trembled. Rationally, I told myself that forums are full of exaggerations, hoaxes, and scared people. But then I heard it again, scratching. Slow, deliberate, coming from that locked door. And this time, it wasn't just scratching. It was more precise, like something was pressing its claws against the wood, trying to form letters, trying to communicate. I froze. My name, whispered, clear. "Michael." I jumped back from the door, hands clutching my chest. I wasn't imagining it. I was sure of it. It knew my name. I spent the next day trying to rationalize, to research, to distract myself. But the hotel seemed to actively resist any distraction. Hallways weren't the same when I walked them. Lights flickered more violently when I passed. Doors creaked as if following my movements. Once, I turned a corner and caught a glimpse of a figure at the far end of the hall. Tall, dark, just standing there. The moment I blinked, it was gone. Empty hallway. I tried to tell myself it was a trick of the lights, a shadow from the old building's wiring, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. I stopped eating. I barely slept. My nights were spent sitting on the edge of the bed, listening to that door, every nerve in my body on fire. I started recording audio, trying to capture the whispers. When I played them back, it wasn't just whispers. There were patterns, scratches forming rhythm, growls too low to hear consciously, breath brushing against the microphone. Sometimes it sounded like laughter, sometimes like warning, always deliberate, always patient. One night, I noticed the shadows behaving differently. They weren't just flickering anymore. They were congregating near the door. Shapes formed in the darkness, fleeting but undeniable, humanoid, watching, waiting. And I realized something that made my stomach turn. They weren't just shapes, they were alive. Or at least they had consciousness. The air around me was thick, heavy with anticipation, as if they knew I was considering opening the door. I tried to escape it with logic. It's a closet. It's a maintenance room. It's nothing. But the scratching and the whispers ignored my logic. Every time I looked away, something moved closer. Every time I turned back, the door seemed to breathe. I even tried calling the front desk, pretending to ask for another room for advice. She answered, voice flat. Room 407 is fully functional. There's nothing unusual. I slammed the phone down. It wasn't just that she didn't help. It was the tone. She knew. They all knew, and they weren't going to tell me anything. By the third night, I had stopped pretending to ignore it. I sat in front of the locked door, notebook in hand, documenting every sound, every movement. I wrote down whispers, scratches, shifts in shadow. I even spoke aloud, as if to test a response. Who's there? A pause. Then the scratching. A low, guttural growl. My name again. Michael. I had a choice. I could stay paralyzed in fear, in denial, or I could face it. And as much as terror screamed at me to leave it alone, a part of me, the part that's reckless, the part that's obsessed with knowing, wanted to open it. I don't know why I feel drawn to it. Maybe it's curiosity. Maybe it's madness, but I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop feeling the weight of those whispers pressing into my skull. I feel trapped, like a fly buzzing against a glass wall. The locked door is the glass, and whatever is behind it is pressing against me from the other side. Waiting, patient, watching. And I'm starting to think that it's not just a door, it's a warning. One that I might not heed. I shouldn't have unlocked it, but I had to know. That's the only explanation I can give now. And it's a weak one. Weak and pathetic, but honest. Because the pull of that door, the weight of the whispers, the way the shadows flickered and leaned toward it, it became unbearable. Days of hearing my name, seeing shapes move, feeling something pressed just behind the locked wood. I couldn't take it anymore. I tried every rational excuse in my head. It's just a closet. Maybe maintenance keeps something in there. It's all in your head, Michael. I repeated those words like a mantra, but when the scratching started again that night, steady and deliberate, I knew I wouldn't last. The scratching had changed. It wasn't random anymore. It was intentional, as if the entity, whatever it was, knew I was considering defiance. The key I didn't have wouldn't matter. I didn't need it. I pried at the lock with a hairpin, with my fingernails, anything that could twist the mechanism. My hands shook so badly I thought they'd betray me. The air in the room thickened like I was breathing in water. My heart pounded so hard I was sure the sound would betray me to whatever waited behind the door. And then, click, the lock gave way under my desperate persistence. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the small room. For a moment, I froze, staring at the door. Light didn't spill from the crack like it should have. Nothing did. Only darkness. Blacker than black, like someone had sucked all the light from that small space. And it wasn't just darkness, it moved, rippling, shifting, like liquid shadow. I swallowed hard. Every instinct screamed at me to close the door, to run, to tear the lock back apart and pretend none of this ever happened. But I couldn't. My feet moved before my mind caught up. I pushed it open. The smell hit me first. Decay, wet wood, and something metallic, like blood old enough to have dried and festered into the air itself. My stomach churned. The room was wrong. It wasn't like the hotel room I had been in. The walls leaned in impossible angles. The floor rippled slightly, like standing on water. Shadows clung to every corner, but they weren't shadows. They were shapes. Twisted, humanoid, flickering in and out of form. Their eyes glinted, black and deep, reflecting no light, only sucking it in. I stepped inside. Every step made the floor moan, groan, whisper under my weight. My ears rang with faint echoes of voices, low, guttural, overlapping, my own name repeated in dozens of tones. Michael, Michael, Michael. I wanted to run. I should have, but my feet didn't obey. They carried me deeper into the room, into the impossible architecture, the shifting corners that had no right to exist. And that's when I saw it, the figure. Or figures. I can't be sure if it was one entity or a dozen, because it didn't make sense. They didn't move the way humans move. Parts of them shimmered in and out of reality, twisted limbs, elongated faces that seemed almost human, almost familiar, but wrong. Their eyes were hollow voids, mouths stretching impossibly wide, and they were watching me, waiting, studying, feeding. And then one of them moved toward me. Not fast, not slow. It glided, like oil spreading across water. I could feel it before I saw it. cold, wet, a pressure on my chest like the room itself was pressing me down. It spoke, not words exactly, but sounds, low, guttural, vibrating in my bones, and somehow I understood it. Why, Michael, here, I stammered, tried to speak, but no sound came out. My throat was dry, my tongue heavy, panic clawed at my chest. Every instinct screamed run, but the door behind me slammed shut. Not physically, it didn't need to. The room itself seemed to swallow it. The way I came in, the way I could leave, disappeared. I was trapped. Then the hallucinations began. Or maybe they were real. I can't tell anymore. The walls bled, slowly at first, and the ceiling dripped thick black liquid. The figures whispered, voices overlapping, names, threats, warnings. My reflection appeared in patches on the twisted floor, but it wasn't me. It was me, older or younger or wrong. My eyes hollowed, my lips stretched, my hands twisted. I tried to move, to back away, but the room resisted. The floor rippled like liquid, pulling me, bending reality around me. And then I felt it, inside my head. Not a voice this time, but a feeling, a probing, invasive sensation. That entity was inside me, testing me, examining me. My thoughts weren't mine. My memories felt like someone else's. I remembered childhood events I hadn't lived, faces I didn't know, places that never existed. Hours passed, or minutes. Time didn't exist there. Only the whispers, the shadows, the pressure of being studied. I don't even know how I realized I was screaming. The sound ripped from me, raw and primal, and the entity recoiled, just for a second. That second gave me the tiniest fleeting window to act. I ran. I ran blindly, across the rippling floor, past the flickering shadows, past the impossible walls. My hands clawed at the edges of reality, and somehow, somewhere, I burst through a threshold and slammed the door behind me. I collapsed on the carpet of my hotel room, the real one. The one that made sense, that smelled of stale air and cleaning solution. I was soaked with sweat, shaking, chest heaving. The key to the locked door lay on the floor beside me, innocuous and harmless looking in the harsh hotel light. But I knew better. It wasn't harmless. I thought it was over. I thought I had escaped. I thought maybe, just maybe, the entity couldn't follow me here, couldn't breach the physical world. I was wrong. Because when I looked up, my reflection in the TV screen, dim, static-filled, wasn't mine. My eyes weren't my own. They were dark, hollow, and watching. And behind me, I swear I saw a shadow flicker. Just a flicker, but enough to know it had followed me. I don't know how long I sat there, paralyzed, staring at that TV. Every sound in the hotel, the elevator ding, the creak of the floorboards, the distant hum of air conditioning, felt amplified, menacing. Every shadow in the corner of the room seemed to twitch toward me. The entity was patient. It didn't rush. It didn't need to. I tried rationalizing it, telling myself it was trauma, exhaustion, hallucinations from fear and sleep deprivation. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And I know it's not gone. It's waiting. And the worst part, I think it knows I know. I don't know how much longer I can endure this. I don't know if I can go back to that door. But a part of me, the part that's reckless, curious, and utterly foolish, wants to. Wants to see it, understand it, confront it. Because I feel drawn. Like the door isn't just a place. It's a call. And the call isn't finished. Leaving wasn't the end. It followed me home. That much I knew almost immediately. I tried to convince myself otherwise. Tried to tell myself it was a hallucination. That exhaustion and fear had finally snapped my mind. But the moment I stepped into my apartment, the air felt heavier, thicker, like a fog had been poured over everything familiar, and that fog carried the smell of the Stanton Inn, the damp, metallic stench of decayed wood and old carpet. I locked the door behind me, twice, checked the windows, every lock, every latch, every bolt engaged. My rational brain tried to cling to logic. It's just paranoia. You left the hotel. The entity couldn't follow you. Then the scratching started. Not in the walls, not in the floorboards. It came from my bedroom, the room I knew intimately, the room I had lived in for years. I froze. The hair on my arms stood straight. My heart raced like a drum in my chest. I slowly turned my head. The door to my bedroom was ajar. I didn't leave it open. I never leave it open. The shadows inside seemed thicker than usual, darker, pulling on the floor in unnatural angles. And I swear I heard a whisper. Not a soft one this time. Clear. My name. Michael. I ran, slammed the door, locked it, but it didn't stop. The whispers became footsteps, pacing just outside. The air vibrated with intent. Objects shifted. My lamp, my books, my keys, subtle at first, just enough to make me question my own memory, but unmistakably moved. I thought I could sleep, pretending exhaustion would reset my mind. I tried. I closed my eyes. But the entity had no patience for such tricks. The floorboards creaked, the walls sighed. My reflection in the mirror didn't align. My reflection smiled when I didn't. My reflection blinked when I didn't. I started keeping track. Every sound, every movement, every whisper. My apartment, my sanctuary had become an extension of that room, that damn door. I researched frantically online. Hotels, hauntings, urban legends. Anything that could explain why a room would attach itself to someone, why it would follow them. Nothing made sense. There were stories of entities clinging to travelers, sure, but nothing that described what I was experiencing. The logic refused to fit. The room itself was breaking reality and my mind couldn't keep up. Then the phenomena escalated. My TV turned on by itself. Flickering, static-filled images. My reflection appeared in corners of the room I didn't expect. Shadows formed shapes, humanoid, stretching, impossibly leaning toward me. And worst of all, the whispers weren't just calling my name anymore. They were talking. Commands, warnings, pleas, sometimes laughter, sometimes crying. Sometimes me speaking, but I wasn't speaking. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus. My friends called, worried about my absence, and I barely managed words. I told them I was sick, that I needed a break. I didn't tell them about the hotel, the door, the entity. I didn't even tell myself fully, because if I admitted it, maybe I'd break completely. It began to manipulate reality more openly. I would leave my apartment, come back, and things would be rearranged. Not randomly, deliberately. Pictures turned upside down. Furniture subtly shifted, shadows pooled unnaturally in corners. My apartment was becoming a reflection of the hotel room behind that door. Every time I blinked, I feared it would be worse than before. One night, I awoke to a figure in the hallway outside my bedroom. Only this time, it wasn't fleeting. Not a trick of the light. It stood there, humanoid in shape, impossibly tall, limbs stretched in ways that made no sense. Black eyes, hollow, endless, watching. The air around it vibrated, thick and heavy. My chest tightened, my limbs froze, and then it spoke. Not with words exactly, but with thought. Not in a voice I could hear, but in a voice that was inside me, pressing, probing, bending my mind around its shape. Michael, you cannot leave. I staggered back. My apartment didn't make sense. The walls pulsed, breathing almost. The floor rippled. The ceiling flexed like it was made of rubber. My reflection in the mirror reached out toward me. I screamed, but my own voice returned with delay, echoing in distortion, mocking me. I ran into the kitchen, into the living room, into the hallway, every room warped, every shadow moving toward me, every whisper urging me to look, to open, to obey. The entity had crossed from that hotel room into my world, my sanctuary, and there was no escape. I tried reasoning. It's a trick, I muttered aloud. It's exhaustion, hallucinations. I need help. Words were swallowed by the room itself. I turned and the bedroom door, the door I had locked, was open. Blackness spilling into my apartment, curling around the corners, reaching for me. And in that blackness, I saw the room. Not just part of it, but the whole thing. The distorted walls, the impossible angles, the shadows waiting. It was like a pocket of another reality had been stitched into my apartment. And I knew then, I had never really left the hotel. Maybe I had never entered fully either. Maybe it had never existed in the way I thought. All I knew was that the entity, the room, the whispers, they were here. They had attached to me permanently. I tried to run outside. I grabbed the door handle. My apartment door, the front door, didn't budge. It was like the building itself resisted my escape. Panic consumed me. My phone, useless. No signal, no help. Just me and the shadows and the entity and the room that had followed me home. Then it revealed itself fully. Not just a shadow, not just whispers, but the form that had haunted my nights. A shape stepped forward. Solid now, humanoid but wrong. Mouths too wide, eyes too deep, limbs bending in ways that made me dizzy just to look. It smiled and I saw inside it. My fear, my memories, my terror, and it ate them. Consumed them, folded them, spat them back at me in twisted fragments. I screamed. I can't describe the sound. It wasn't mine. It belonged to the entity now, vibrating through the air, through the walls, through my own chest. I tried to fight, to strike, to push. My hands passed through it, or maybe it through me. I couldn't tell. The apartment bent around me, shadow pooling, lights flickering, and then silence. I woke in my bed, the morning sunlight streaming weakly through my blinds. My apartment looked normal, almost. Too normal, too perfect. I checked every corner. Everything seemed in place. But when I looked into the mirror, my reflection smiled at me. I didn't. I live now in constant awareness. I lock doors, windows, cabinets, even closets. I see shadows where they shouldn't be. I hear whispers I shouldn't. Sometimes they call my name gently, like a lullaby, and I realize they're patient. They don't need to hurry. They have time. The hotel never existed fully, or maybe it always existed. Maybe it was a place waiting for me or waiting for anyone. And now it's part of me. The room, the door, the entity, they're no longer confined to space. They live in the cracks of reality around me. They are inside me, beside me, behind every corner. I tell you this because someone should know. Because if it spreads, if it finds another, if it follows someone else, at least there will be a warning. Never check into room 407. Never go searching for doors you aren't meant to open. Because leaving isn't the end, and it never will be. The room follows, and it always will. All right, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the story. We have so many more amazing stories coming your way, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to reach 100K subscribers by the end of this year, and we'd love for you to be part of this journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.